I'm Jen. I'm the kind of old autistic lady. And I was wondering how many of you have thought about coordination, clumsiness, falling as a middle aged or older autistic individual. I think it's been pretty normal. Oh, I hate that word. Uh, well known. That's the word I want. Well known that a lot of autistic people have different postural gaits, maybe walk on their tiptoes, all that kind of thing. Well, one of the things that was going on when I was in my over year long hiatus was due to something with just this topic. So I'm going to dig down into what happened to me and this study I found. I know that some of you might benefit from the closed captioning where I read, where you can see the movement of my mouth along with the words. And some of you, especially if you're viewing on a computer, may prefer to see it all in one big block of text as I go through each section. And some of you, I'm sure, would rather just go read this on your own. So I'm going to try to cater to all three groups because I think I myself fall into all three camps depending on the topic and how long a video is. So feel free to skip forward during the parts where I'm actually reading this if you feel like, okay, I've got a handle on it. I read it on my own or whatnot. So I'm going to start with this article, and it is from Spark Research for Autism. So sparkforautism.org is the body that came out with this research study. And the title of the study is Spark Research Match Report: Do Balance and Movement Issues Continue into Middle and Older Age for Autistic People? And this study just came out in February of this year, so it is pretty recent, which I like. I don't really want to go through really old studies if I can help it. And this was an actual study. It wasn't one of these deals where it's a study, but they like put a whole bunch of prior study stuff together and look at it statistically. It's not that. They like did a specific study on this topic. And the title of the study itself is Atypical Postural Control Variability and Coordination Persist into Middle and Older Adulthood in Autism Spectrum Disorder. And what the study was about, so this study investigated whether balance and movement problems commonly seen in autistic children are also found in middle-aged and older autistic adults. And they also wanted to understand how aging affects postural stability in autistic adults, because falling is a major cause of injury for this group. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Yes, me. Okay. So how was it done? So they looked at adults aged 30 to 73, which admittedly is a very large range. I'm 45. I fall in this range. I'm still kind of on the younger end of the range, which I kind of like, which is why I'm kind of old autistic lady. But there were 47 autistic adults, and they were compared against 48 adults without autism. And they were matched by age, gender, IQ for comparison, from my understanding, across the cohort. And interestingly, like if I was going to design a study to try to figure this out, I would not have thought to do it this way. So I think it's really cool that there's a lot of different minds, and I'm not a researcher. So admittedly, that's why I don't design research studies. But what they did was they asked these adults to stand barefoot on a special force platform that tracks body movements. And they were asked to perform 3 different tasks. One was standing as still as possible using their ankles. And then the second one was using their ankles to sway forward and backwards continuously without lifting their feet. So that was the second thing. And then the third one was using their hips to sway side to side. And then they used computers to track, how they moved, how far the movement was, how smooth or shaky their movements were. And so I find this really fascinating because it wasn't even like people weren't asked to lift their feet. It was stand still. Okay, we're going to measure some stuff. Stand still and rock forward and backwards using your ankles as stability. And then the third one was stand still and use your hips to sway back and forth, left or right. I'm going to tell you right now that walking is a lot more complicated than those three things. And which is why I'm making a video about this, because after we go through the study, I'm going to tell you about what happened to me, and why I have such an interest in this. So what they found isn't earth-shattering in terms of, you already knew I fell. You already probably knew I wouldn't bring a study in this video saying there was no impact at all. But they did find that when standing still, autistic adults swayed significantly more than adults without autism. So stand still, we sway more. And also they showed during that standing still that there was movement both rocking forward and side to side when the folks were supposed to stand still. And then the second part, when people were being asked to sway on purpose, autistic adults moved differently. And I thought the next thing was really fascinating. It says they did not sway as far as the adults without autism, and their movements were jerkier, which I kind of thought would maybe happen, especially when changing direction. So the swaying wasn't as far when the swaying was supposed to happen on purpose. And I have to half wonder, was it because people in the study maybe knew that they were already have a little bit of a balance issue, so we're gonna be conservative and not move as much. I would have loved to see like an exit interview with all these people, but of course I don't have that. And then it talks about how just in general, when people get older, they sway more, their balance gets worse. In older autistic adults swayed less in the forward-backward direction compared to younger autistic adults. So that's good to know. I'm going to say that again. Older autistic adults swayed less in the forward-backwards direction compared to younger autistic adults. And then for those autistic adults, having a lower verbal IQ is linked to having more trouble keeping their movements steady during the forward-backward sway task. So the study talks about, well, what does all of this mean and why is it innovative? So apparently this is the first study to focus on middle-aged and older autistic adults and to study them standing still and then in these various movements, which begs the question. I think probably the older I get, the more studies we're going to see on older autistic adults because of how the diagnostic criteria have changed throughout my lifetime, even on who is autistic and what types of needs people in the autism spectrum need. And so I'm really glad they're doing these kinds of things and studying with older people, older meaning middle-aged, age 30 and above is what this study did. So the whole thing about why this is, and I'm just going to read this one verbatim because I think it's important that I not interpret what's being said here. It says, these findings show that balance problems seen in autistic children are also found in middle-aged and older autistic adults. And as a group, these adults had trouble coordinating their muscles to move smoothly. They seem to struggle with separating forward movements from side-to-side movements when needed, making their balance less efficient. And because they had less stability when standing still and less coordination when moving, they may be at a higher risk of falls. Okay, I'm going to take my glasses off because I can't read without them on, but I don't like the glare in the videos. So, I don't think that this is probably a surprise to too many people, except for the differences in how the movements were, especially if you're an autistic adult, age 30 and older, who does have balance issues, like I do. Y'all, I'm going to come out and tell you here. So I have fallen twice in my adult life. Once was in 2022. So it was about a year before I was diagnosed, year and a half. And then I fell during this hiatus I was on in the last year, 13, 14 months. Both of the falls, I was walking, and both of the falls were not a case of, oh, hey, I feel like I'm off, or I feel like I'm, about to, like I didn't do anything that made me feel until the fall happened that it was going to happen. So it wasn't one of these deals where you can kind of tell you're losing your balance and you brace your fall. It wasn't that. It was walking, bam, I'm down on both occasions. The first fall was serious enough. I completely tore through a really important ligament in the foot, and it is the only thing holding two specific bones together in the midfoot. So that required a fusion surgery that took a very long time to get over. I had to be off of it for a very long time because bones in the feet are very small, so they have to completely heal when they're fused, because it doesn't take much force to break them again. And lots of physical therapy. But then after I was diagnosed, in this period that I was not making videos anyway, I had another fall, and this one was much worse. Both these falls were outside on concrete, and as I've mentioned, I'm going to keep saying this, I am sober. I'm sober now. I was sober during both of these falls. I am a sober alcoholic, and I bring that up pretty much any video where it's interest, where it's relevant, because addiction is such a prevalent thing in the autistic community that if you're stumbling across one of these videos for the first time and you didn't know that, maybe you're just starting to learn about adult autism, it is very common. So I talk about addiction a lot. I talk about sobriety a lot. But going back to the falls. So I was sober. I was middle-aged. I was outside. I was on concrete, and I was walking with what felt like my normal cadence, my normal way of walking. And the second fall, I broke 3 bones in my foot and 3 bones in my ankle, and I completely tore through a bunch of ligaments in the ankle-ish area. So I had to have surgery. I had to have lots of plates and screws and metal stuff that's holding my ankle together still. And then the some of the plates and screws were to allow the ankle to heal, and the stuff's still in my foot. I'm not having it taken out unless there's a problem with it. But between the 2 falls, I have 4 incisions, and 2 times that I've been under anesthesia, for a total of 3 times I've been under anesthesia, because I had to have hardware taken out of my foot because I broke the hardware in my foot a year after I fell the first time, or a year after I had the surgery. I'm saying this all incorrectly. I fell in 2022. I had surgery in 2022 to fix the foot. Then, before it was a full year after I had recovered, I broke the hardware during a time period when I was able to weight bear. It just broke. But I couldn't have it taken out until I had been a year past, because it takes that long for everything to fully heal. So I had it taken out in 2023. And then there's the fall that happened in 2025. If you've seen some of my past videos also, you'll know that I was in physical therapy for a neck issue that's completely unrelated to these falls. Coincidentally, the fall that I had where I did all the stuff to my ankle and foot and had to have these other surgeries, it was on the day that I found out that I didn't have to keep going to more doctor's appointments for the neck thing. So I went from let's go to lots of physical therapy for the neck thing and then fall, be off of it once I could be on it again after these surgeries. And I had to go through lots of physical therapy again and start from scratch, basically. And you may have noticed I've lost some weight since before the break happened, and that was all on purpose, and it's all good, except when you lose weight, you lose muscle mass as well. So lots of muscle building. I say all of this and bring it all up because I know myself now, after having been through two very life-changing falls where I had to be completely off of my limb for an extended period of time, had to use a walker for an extended period of time. One of the falls I moved because I had lots of stairs in the place I was living, and I couldn't do that while I wasn't able to put weight on the foot. The other fall, had to have a ramp put in. Even though I live in a place that doesn't have stairs, there's just a little bit of a lip, and this much of it was bad enough that I couldn't get over it while I wasn't weight bearing. Found out very quickly that it's hard to find real estate available on the market when you really need it that doesn't have steps. I'm in Middle Tennessee, and not a lot of new construction that doesn't have steps, and not a lot of existing homes that don't have steps, because a lot of the houses here in Middle Tennessee don't have basements, because we're on very rocky soil. So most places, the vast majority of places, you look at them and there's at least one step to get up. Lots of them that are still ranch houses have 2 or 3 steps to get up. We bought the place that we live in because I had already had the first fall as an experience and knew that I never ever wanted to have to move again due to the whole step thing. Y'all, I'm only 45. I'm not a frail, elderly adult who is thinking of these things because I'm, in the age range of people that as society as a whole you would think of would fall. But because I'm autistic, I have some issues that at least contributed to both of these falls. I don't personally think they were the cause of either one, and I won't get into the details of why, but I think they were a contributing factor, more or less, to a more or lesser degree, depending on which fall you're talking about. And I think that it's important that if you have balance issues, if you are somebody where you know that this is an issue for you, but you've never had a major fall and you're not elderly, I want to try to say this very diplomatically. You might want to look for a place that doesn't have stairs, or a first floor apartment, or a first floor condo, because it might happen with a greater sense of probability than if you weren't autistic. Of course, everybody's different, everybody's body is different, everybody's autism affects them differently and have different support needs attached to how your autism affects you. But I know for me, my proprioception is such that I have to constantly be aware of it now, because I can't afford to fall again. It has been too big of a thing. From the calf down, I have 4 scars on the same leg, and being middle-aged, it's a real thing that during these long periods when I had to be non-weight bearing, I had to put my other leg through a lot of extra stress, my knee, my hip, my foot, because it was having to do everything. If I had to get out of a chair, out of a bed, later when I was trying to get in and out of the shower, which I didn't notice our shower didn't have a flat, like you couldn't have a wheelchair and just roll into it. The way the doors are on the shower, it swings out and then there's a step up about this high. And I had been in this home for over a year before I even realized that there was a step to get in the shower that I had been stepping over every day. Like I just never thought about it, because when you don't need that accommodation, you don't notice it. And then when you do need the accommodation, it's like, oh my goodness, I now, this thing that's this big, I now can't get in the shower because it wasn't just like a tub with a shower curtain where you could put like a shower chair in it and just swing your hips over. It wasn't that. It was, I can't get in and out because literally it just didn't work. Just didn't work. So fortunately, we have a second restroom that does have that sort of a style of, like a tub, a shower curtain, and I could swing my body over. But it had its own set of issues that aren't really relevant to this video. But you might want to think about finding a place to live where you won't have to have special accommodations made to it, to the physical, what the house is like, when you're a first-time home buyer, if you're autistic, or as a second-time home buyer, as an autistic person, as an autist. Or, when you might be living in a second floor apartment now, but maybe you move and you're taking a look at what kind of a lease you want to be in. I'm outright telling you that if I had a time machine and I was in that situation where I was figuring out my living situation, I absolutely would be on a first floor apartment or condo. I wouldn't buy a townhouse. I lived in a townhouse for like 14 years, and that was the place that we had to move out of and sell when I had the first fall, because y'all, literally, it was the setup where you open a door and there's 17 stairs immediately to get to the living area of the place. First floor was a garage, and then there was a third floor that I, of course, didn't go on when I had this issue, but it was another 17 stairs to get to where our washer and dryer are. So it was very similar to what somebody who's in a third floor apartment would have to do, hauling laundry up and down stairs and that sort of thing. And luckily, I did not live by myself. I think that for both of these falls, if I had lived alone, if I wasn't cohabitating, my husband and I, he's been fantastic. He helped me with so many things. But if I hadn't been in that situation, if I had lived alone, I think for sure for a couple of weeks, I either would have had to have a friend really help me that I wouldn't mind them seeing me naked and everything, helping me bathe and toilet and do all of these things that were just next to impossible for both of these periods of my life, or pay to have somebody come in and help, or perhaps go into like a skilled nursing/nursing home that has a rehab sort of facility type of thing until I could get over those pieces. And that's just one part of the puzzle. The other thing that I really took to heart was I was in a wheelchair whenever I had to go to doctor's appointments, whether they were appointments for this particular thing or appointments for, just other doctor's appointments I had that I couldn't put off because it was such an extended period of time. And, which means I had somebody to drive me. I had somebody that could help me transition from the wheelchair to the car and vice versa. Because at the time that I fell, if you've seen my other videos, this is going to surprise no one. So I'm just really straightforward with it. Y'all, I've lost like 80 pounds and I still have more to lose. So I was as morbidly obese. I could only walk so far with a walker while hopping. And even if I had been the weight I am now, it would have been a struggle because my upper body strength, I wasn't conditioned to have to do that. For those of you who might be autistic and also have another disability where maybe you're a wheelchair user, you use a cane, you use a walker, you use a scooter, other assistive devices, I totally got a taste of it. And I feel fortunate that I was able to rehab back to where that wasn't an issue. But as is said many times about the disability community, a disability is really the our type of community is the only community that you're probably going to join at one point or other if you live long enough, because we all tend to have some sort of an issue, whether it's sight, vision, hearing, mobility, our voice having issues, so many things that happen as we age. And so I would have really had a much harder time if I didn't have somebody who lived with me full time, who I was totally comfortable with, helping me with all these things. This would not have been a roommate kind of you're going to help me type situation. So I find that most likely the rest of my life, I'm going to have to be very careful about how I walk, where I'm looking when I walk. I'm very I look down at the ground and I look up a lot more than I did ever before either of these two falls, but especially after the second fall. And so I know it's a really popular thing right now with some YouTubers and folks on TikTok to be outside walking while filming. I don't know if you got like a gimbal in their hand or something. I will never do that, y'all, because I am not going to fall because I made a YouTube video. I'm not going to fall because of that. That will not be a thing for me ever, because I have to just be really careful about it. And I've talked a long time ago about walking down halls and how my sense of vision is, and another phenomena that can happen with autistic differences called tunneling. That may have played a factor in at least one of these falls. I'm not sure, because I don't think I was tunneling at the time for either of them. I mean, I was just walking and bam, I went down for both of these. So I'm going to leave you all with a set of tips that I have if you've never fallen, or if you have fallen once and you're worried about falling again. These may be applicable whether or not you're neurodivergent, but I'm coming at it from the lens of my own set of profile in terms of autism. The first thing is, and might seem really common sense, but y'all, when you're out walking, unless you absolutely have to, you don't have anything in your hands, because at least you can help brace your fall if you don't. I did not have anything in my hands for the second fall. I did for the first. I was pulling a laptop on the first fall and had my purse around my shoulder. The second fall, I had nothing in my hands. But if you are distracted by something you have in your hands, like don't carry your phone and walk, y'all. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you have to, put the phone in your pocket, and get it back out if you need it. Google Maps or something. If you're trying to figure out where you're walking, walk a couple blocks, stop, get out of other people's way, check it, put it back in your pocket or purse. Because it only adds one more element of, oh my goodness, this could cause me to fall. Number two, pay attention to elevation differences and imperfections in the walking surface that you're on. I know that's common sense. I was doing it on both, but believe you me, I pay attention to it now. Way more, probably twice as much as I did before I had either of these falls. And I notice imperfections on concrete so much more now. Number three, when you get out of a vehicle, look down before you step. I've noticed on a handful of occasions since having this second fall especially, that immediately the place where I would put my feet to get out of a vehicle is a pothole. Parking lots are there's really a spectrum spectrum on how well they're taken care of. And you might see a pothole coming when you're walking because you can see it out in the distance, looking a few feet or meters ahead of you, but looking out when you step completely out of a car or any other type of vehicle, you might not expect it. The next tip is when it is raining or windy or anything like that, of course, pay more attention. That goes without saying. But I wear glasses, and as soon as they get wet with mist or fog or raindrops, snow, whatever it is, I have a harder time. And so I actually sometimes find myself taking my glasses off. The way my sight works, I'm in progressive lenses now that I'm middle-aged, but I can tell if there are holes and imperfections on the concrete with my glasses off. My sight is such that it makes sense for me to do that. Or as you've seen before, I wear hats a lot too, so that helps keep the sun out of my eyes too when I might be tempted to otherwise squint and not be looking in the right places. So I always have that as a caution too. That's just me. And the last tip I'm going to give is if you feel like you're having balance problems in your walking, don't be afraid to just stop and get your bearings about you while you're not trying to go from here to there. If you're close to something that you can put your hand on to sort of get your proprioception sort of stabilized to know where you are in space. I definitely do that a lot more than I used to, and it's really helped me, especially when I'm walking on a sidewalk next to a building. If there's somebody coming near me and I have to, get out of the way and it causes me to step in a way that I wouldn't normally step, not like twisting my ankle or anything, but just, stepping in a way that I wasn't intending to step, I will do that. I will get myself off of the main center part of a sidewalk and I'll touch the building just to get my whole sense of, okay, my feet are firmly planted on the ground. I'm not moving anymore. I'm good to go. And bonus tip, if you have issues with dizziness due to any number of things, physical things, medication, low blood pressure, other things like POTS, any number of things. If you are somebody that deals with dizziness with a semi amount of frequency, because this is something I have also dealt with in my life, know where your limits are. And if you are feeling like you are a little bit more dizzy at a particular time, you know what? It's okay to wait to leave a place. I would much rather now be 5 or 10 minutes late than be in a rush to leave when I'm already dizzy or already have some sort of another issue that's making me feel kind of off, to where I can make sure, okay, I'm going to eat a snack, make sure my blood sugar is not too low, that kind of a thing. Sit down if I feel like it's a blood pressure issue. Y'all know, if you've watched my videos, I've also been to physical therapy for essentially dizziness issues that were not related to like crystals in my ears. Long, complicated story. You can find the video if you want to find out. But you put all those things together and it's like these tips are so important. And every time a new thing gets added, whether it's a reason that I would feel off or a reason that I would feel like I was going to have a life-altering thing like a fall, I try to learn more from it. So if those tips helped you, feel free to like and subscribe. And I will put a link to this study in the description of the video. And lastly, of course, as always, thanks for watching. Take care.